Now, the next thing is much deeper, more subtle, but also more profound and impactful. When I settled on Thailand, I was consciously looking to medicate the chauvinism that I had learned in Western cultures. I'd spent time in Canada, United States, Cyprus, Scotland, uh, England, um, and the thing that I had learned in all of that was that my value came from my money, my articulating talent, which is correlated with thoughts, and my, I guess, success, accomplishments, running a business, things like that. And so this was what was valuable. And this was measured on levels of interesting. So the word interesting measures the value of a thought pattern in a Western culture. Now, notice that none of this is feminine. Uh, I was not valued for my warmth or affection. I was not valued for my feelings. I was not valued for the level of intimacy or the level of spontaneity or quality time, for any of the art that I had done. These were all feminine traits that my culture has very little interest in. And this is, of course, a deep wound because we're whole human beings, but we find ourselves stuck in cults that honor half of who we are. And so I set about to find a place on the planet. I asked myself, could it be that there was any place on the planet at all where I could experience being a whole human being with dignity? And in particular, since I'd had this chauvinism shoved down my throat in so many different ways, could there be a place that would medicate that wound by honoring the feminine in me more than it honored the masculine in me? And after a little research, it looked like Bali, possibly Philippines, and Thailand were good contenders. And of those, it seemed Thailand was the best situation. And that's been my experience, having visited all three. In the United States, I can talk about suicide with an American not batting an eye, no change in facial expression. It is a completely sociopathic cult when it comes to the depth of human feeling. Now, meanwhile, so suicide ignored, depression ignored, this and that and the other. So if you talk to an American, or I've done the math, on hours and hours and hours of interactions with whether it's family members, clients, employees, lovers, partners, etc., in the United States. If you do the math, it's stunning how committed an American is to stepping over the most vulnerable feelings almost as if they're an embarrassment. Meaning, America is embarrassed by femininity. America is ashamed of half of the human psyche. Now, this is a disaster. Meanwhile, they will respond to things that are interesting. So if you talk for an hour and you mention this strong feeling ignored, this strong feeling overlooked, this strong feeling turned away from in embarrassment, and then you'll say something about business or money or something, and they'll say, oh, that's very interesting. And it's like, where the fuck do you get your hierarchy of interests from? Because strong relationships are formed by the degree to which the most vulnerable and intense emotions in both parties are honored. That's how strong relationships are formed. And they are completely ignored 80% of the time in the United States. which weakens the emotional fabric of empathy and connection and safety. That's the cult of America. Now, the exact opposite thing happens in Thailand. When I start talking, for example, this would be a terrible Thai video for a Thai person. Um, 5 minutes into this video, they would be smiling at me. Dane, you talk too much. You talk too much. Why you think like that? And they would laugh. So subtly reminding me that human beings in the present moment and feelings are far more important than abstract, heady bullshit. Now, at the same time, if I'm sad, if I'm lonely, if I'm emotional in Thailand, this is prioritized. And what's fascinating is they don't even need to know the language. Most Thais cannot speak a word of English, but they can speak volumes in empathy. As a result, I feel more cared about, more loved, and more at home, and more loyal to the Thai people, the Thai country, and the Thai culture than I do to my own. A Thai stranger is likely to show me more empathy than a family member, than the most sensitive family member in my family. And my family is not considered particularly sociopathic. It's if anything, kind of more alternative than most, and that's a stunning statistic to me. I talked with two of my siblings during a suicidal period for 4 hours. I wanted to be thorough because choosing to die is a big deal. So I talked with each of them for 4 hours. Not one sibling in the entire 4-hour period made a single empathic statement. Now, this was a stunning equation. They made many shaming statements, many diminishing, many critical, many questioning statements, many, well, what about this and what about that statements, but not a single empathic statement. Now, this is a Waldorf-raised, New Age-raised set of American siblings. And they are by no means the most sociopathic Americans that I encounter. That's stunning for me. As a result, I feel that to cry as a man in front of many Americans is an act of dishonoring myself because I'm inviting an empathy with a person who is incompetent to give it in any meaningful way. And this is a terrifying loneliness on both sides. And it is the loneliness of being a Western male that, thank heavens, lifts by spending time in Thailand. I can't tell you how grateful I am to these people for helping me feel like a human being and not a human doing. And it is so easy to love and be loved by them as a result. It's fun. It's so fun to love and be loved by the Thai people. And we and I can learn so much from their hierarchy of values, which begins by putting the human heart and human beings first. The Thai take care of their elderly without any government interference or involvement, and that's a nice thing to see. In many ways, it's the opposite of the United States, which takes care of those who have the most money, and then kind of poo-poos the elderly, and then secondarily the young. The elderly should be put in old people's homes, not revered and respected. And it's very satisfying to me to see the wisdom, the crone years and the wise old man as an archetype that does not exist much in the United States, but is one of the most beautiful human archetypes. And as the physical body recedes, it is necessary for a culture to be intelligent enough to value and honor the old and care for them in a way that allows that wisdom to come through.